2.2 million now.
Yeah.
Just before
Mad, isn't it?
we recorded this podcast.
And this petition for holding, another general election, because Labour have basically delivered nothing that they say.
They've come and delivered the opposite of what they said they were going to do. Said we're not going to drive a blue car, and then they've got in a three-wheeler Thunderbird that's blue with a basket on top and said, yeah, this isn't a car, and just driven it down the road.
I can't think what Musk's role is. He's been given the job to go through government and employed roles within the federal government and strive for efficiency, which is exactly what he did at Twitter. He laid off tens of thousands of people and made the platform work better.
He's playing the number 10 role. He's playing the Cole Palmer, Foden role. He can float around up top doing what he wants.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the role he's been given. Just
Can still get results.
Just come in and fix things for me. Just create things, make things happen.
Taxing people right, left and centre.
Welcome back to another episode of the Investors Corner. Today I'm joined by Ian and Mike, and in this episode we're going to discuss 5 things that have happened in the property market that are due to happen next year or that have already happened. So hopefully by the end of this you'll have some clarification on those 5 things. So the 5 things are Renters' Rights Bill, favourite topic, stamp duty, land tax changes, capital gains tax changes, the leasehold reforms, and housing supply too. But before we get into that, 2 things. Have you seen what's happening with crypto at the moment?
I've got 2 things.
Big things.
I've got 2 of those things that you're going to talk about on my summary here as
Have
well.
you?
Also, you started that podcast with a little bit of a market trader from the East End sort of accent. Did you notice that? Yes.
There you go.
Cool that.
You all right?
The investors kill that. I quite liked it. So, not been on in a few weeks. Things have changed.
There you go. Welcome back. Things have changed, Ian. Things have changed. Yeah. Crypto is.
I haven't seen what's going on with crypto. I imagine it's doubled again, and I've missed the boat again.
It's happening in crypto. Yeah, you have
another bull run.
I've missed a lot of boats on crypto.
Do you know what? I made.
How many boats are there? Will there be more boats?
Yes. I made £700 in 3 days. Lost it all yesterday, but it's coming back now. Okay. There you go. That's how on the thumb.
That's quite a summary.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to be on that boat.
Trump's had the impact, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously he's pro, and so are his boys club that he's creating. And people seem to be quite big on it. But I think that the actual logic behind it was the SEC chair stepping down January the 20th. I think that's a big thing, that he's been quite anti a lot of it. And with him, obviously with Trump getting in power, him deciding to step down mid-January, Gary Gensler, something like that, I think his name is. That from what I hear from the people in the know, is quite a big impact that's happening. So that would be interesting. The other thing, the petition, were you going to talk about that?
Yeah, petition. We were talking about it earlier. How many signatures did you say earlier?
Well,
the last time you looked.
When I jumped on it, there was 200,000, and that was...
Did you jump on to sign it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Saturday, maybe? That might have been.
Is it?
2.2 million now.
Yeah.
Just before
Mad, isn't it?
we recorded this podcast.
And this petition for holding, another general election, because Labour have basically delivered nothing that they say.
I think worse than that. I think they've come and delivered the opposite of what they said they were going to do. So it's not that they've done nothing. They've actually gone against what they said they were going to do. In a lot of people's eyes, they kind of said we're not gonna drive a blue car, and then they've got in a three-wheeler Thunderbird that's blue with a basket on top and said, yeah, this isn't a car, and just driven it down the road. That's kind of what they've done in a weird sort of analogy.
Very weird analogy.
But works. You paint a picture, didn't you?
Know what you mean.
Yeah. Basically, yeah, they tried to dress it up as we haven't done X, but we kind of are.
Yeah, we're not raising tax for employees. We'll make the employers pay for it.
Yeah.
Like, that's raising tax for employees.
Yeah.
I don't care what it sounds like, it just is. Because it just means as an employee, you cost your employer more money. Therefore, your pay rise is being cut next year. Speaking as an employer. Sorry, Andy. It's a good job we baked in your pay rise last year, isn't it? So we're all right. But it's going to cost me more money than it would. So speaking as an employer, that affects my decision making.
Yeah, I think if companies have got like 20 members of staff, 15 members of staff, and you look at it and go, right, there might be 3 or 4 people in that group that are going to get half decent pay rises next year, and you budgeted for I don't know, 25 grand's worth of additional salary costs next year in pay rises. Well, what's just happened is you've just seen this extra amount of money go bang. So that whole 25 grand that you were going to,
Come straight out of the
it's
budget.
just gone.
It's gone.
So it's just cost everyone's pay rises because the businesses can't do both.
Mm.
They can't add 20 grand's worth of costs and pay 25 grand out on pay rises. So because it doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. So
Do you think there was any other way of doing it though? Obviously, we had this massive black hole of debt where the money needed to come from somewhere to make that up. Do you think that there's anything else that they could have done to make it easier for businesses?
I'd love I can't think what Musk's role is, but I want one.
I don't think anyone knows what his role is. Does he?
Well, he's there for
offering millions
for
of
budget efficiencies, essentially.
Oh, yeah.
He's been given the job to go through government and employed roles within the federal government and strive for efficiency, which is exactly what he did at Twitter. He laid off tens of thousands of people and made the platform work better.
yeah. I would imagine he's playing the number 10 role. He's playing the Cole Palmer, Foden role. He can float around up top doing what he wants.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the role he's been given. Just come in,
Still get results.
come in and fix things for me. Just create things, make things happen.
Taxing people
Yeah.
right, left, and centre. I mean, from the point of view of what things cost, like if £20 billion is allocated towards something, it's like the world's worst run charity. When £20 billion hits a charity, only about 50p seems to get spent on the actual cause. Everything else gets sucked up in admin costs. And that's how governments seem to spend money. So a massive drive for efficiency through every government-run organisation, for me, is how money is created and saved, because it's just wasteful, in my opinion. I don't know if the £20 million black hole exists. I don't know if anyone knows if it exists. You got one side saying it does, one side saying it doesn't. And typically the organisation who apparently uncovered it have said nothing. So I don't know.
That is
You might just refuse that it's there and it never appears. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like fake money, isn't it? Just print more. Who cares?
Well, if you want to get involved in the petition, we'll put it in the show notes, put your name on it and see what happens.
I mean, yeah, 2.2
Probably
million. There must be. I didn't know there were that many farms.
I was in the UK. You know,
It's gone mental.
I watched it earlier for about a minute, and every 5 seconds it's going up by about 150, 200. I was like, wow, it's probably kicking off.
Yeah, I saw a post of, I think it was Trump, Elon Musk, a couple of other, billionaire business owners. I think they were eating McDonald's on a private jet. But the caption around it was, finally entrepreneurs running a country. That's effectively the way that most of the US is looking at it. That the UK media will try and make a sort of mockery of the whole situation and turn it into a clown show. But that's I quite like that. I'm like, well, you've got actual proper business owners that kind of are looking at the country and going, right, here's economically where there's some problems. Let's try and fix it and run it like a business. Whereas we're over here and we're basically just raising enough money to pay the debt of the interest, not even the debt. We're not even paying the debt in this country.
Questionable whether Trump's a successful businessman, but that's for a different day.
He's doing all right. I wouldn't mind being a town
Successful businessman, criminal, marketer.
He's an all-rounder.
We'll all be happy. We'd all be happy to be a pound behind him. He's got a lot more hair than me and you as well.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, is it his or does it belong to a horse? No one knows.
I mean, Andy's got a thick barnet. It could be Andy. Andy could be selling it in trade for crypto.
Grow it out. Love to see it happen.
I'll give you some locks. You give me some crypto, Trump. I mean, bringing it back down to kind of a little bit more our subject to comment on, I looked on a couple of summary stats for people from the 1st of September to today. So call it mid-November, if you like. Open rate, 15%, 15.3% market share. Dominant market leaders in the lettings market. If we went back 12 months, like for like, 12.7. So they've grown 2.5% in 1 year, which is a bigger growth than the second place agent in terms of market leaders, and they're swallowing it up. And I raise that not as a way of going and celebrating open rent, but more as a concern to the landlords out there that are seeing the cheaper meal ticket and going to it like moth to a light or fly to shit, as it may end up being, because as you've got there is a couple of documents of things that are changing. So I just thought I'd raise that, because as open rents market share drastically increases, there's a lot of landlords out there that shouldn't be going that route, I think, because they're not knowledgeable enough in the field to kind of do it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think let's just talk about the Renters' Rights Bill then. So look, it's still something that's being discussed. It's replaced the Renters' Reform Bill. Now, things in there, about Section 21 notices being scrapped, more penalties coming in for landlords that don't do things correctly and try and do them things themselves. So the little graph I've got here is, for example, looking at a PRS landlord database that the government were talking about and are still talking about, and it's probably something that will definitely happen, where you've got to register your property on the database, you've got to register as a landlord as the property on that database, and you've got to register with the new landlord ombudsman. Right now you don't have to do any of that, but you will do once the bill passes, and it will pass at some point. It's just a matter of when. New penalties if you don't do those three things. So £40,000 fine for each one of those if you don't do it, and a rent repayment order if the tenant reports you and you haven't done it. So those are three new things there that you're looking at, where potentially they're massive fines. I mean, you look at rent repayment orders. If you're renting out a 3-bed terraced house and you're paying £2,000 a month, the rent repayment order goes back over 12 months. So you're getting 40 grand plus the rent repayment order over 12 months as well. So some big things in there. And you've got other things like...
What do you think that would do for insurances? Because surely insurance companies are going to see that as a loophole to increase premiums and stuff like that. Because landlords just don't have, in that situation, 64 grand
Well,
on the hip.
if something happens, the insurance company is going to ask for all that paperwork before paying out. It's going to invalidate your policy
But there must be an insurance for the 40 grand, because you're not going to get the insurance company aren't going to say, right, well, show me the document because you're being fined because you haven't got it. There must be an insurance for landlords which protect against something like that being missed. Or
but the only insurance policies that I've seen for landlords, specific landlord insurance policies, are where, if they injure themselves at the property, or rent protection or anything like that.
It's not been relevant, has it?
Yeah.
Now it's going to be a different thing.
Yeah, they could include it.
They'll have to. Yeah. They have to put that in. There have to be some sort of... You'll have to pay a lot of money to insure yourself against that situation, I think. Or like you say, it's just a real vulnerability in the air for the landlord. I mean, get it right. That's obviously... do it properly. But again, all those open renters, 15% of the market going with open rent.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
And the open rent won't be looking at things like like this. They'll just be, set the tenancy up. Let's do the tenancy agreement. We'll do the referencing. On you go. See you later. They don't even serve compliance documents to tenants. That's still the landlord's responsibility. So again, that's something else that they've got to think about. So although open rent is cheap and cheerful, one of these things that are missed, well, you've just cost yourself a fortune. You've got other fines for new things. £7,000 if you create a wrong-term tenancy. Well, that's easily doable. If you don't include certain clauses in there and you create a fixed tenancy still, technically, then £7,000 fine for that. If you don't, if you accept an offer above the proposed rent listed on any of the online platforms, £7,000 fine. Refuse tenants for certain things, £7,000 fine. Refuse applicants with families, £7,000 fine. Or evictions without a specific ground, £40,000 fine. So, all of those things there, that open rent aren't going to look after any of that.
Yeah.
And neither will, the majority of landlords probably won't understand the ins and outs of how that works. So there's potential there for a big fines if you don't do it correctly and try and do it yourself. Some landlords out there can.
It's hard for landlords to know this stuff. That's the whole point. And again, if you're kind of one of those landlords that's doing it private or doing it via open rent or other types of things, it's a bit like going on a massive journey, from the bottom of the country to the middle of the country. You're going on a 2.5 hour drive and there's no road signs to tell you where you're going or what the speed limit is. You've got to do all the research before you go on the journey and then hope you get it right and just see if you get any fines at the end. Like if you do your research and you're really, or you've got someone alongside you that you're paying to navigate and tell you everything, it's that's what you're basically doing. You're driving blind, or you're driving with a guide next to you, or you've got to do your own research. Because imagine just driving and there was no speed signs anywhere. That's basically what you're doing as a private landlord. If
I think most landlords do everything in good faith.
Yeah,
but good faith just isn't going to be enough anymore.
Yeah, they're not being naive or silly about it. They're just,
I think naive
probably
is the exact word. Is oh well, you know, we just want to rent our house out to another family. You know, we don't need all of what they're nice. We're nice. We don't need any of this sort of stuff. Is kind of how I see a lot of landlords acting, which isn't going to be good enough anymore, and it will kill off the shorter term tenancies. It'll kill off the flexibility, rightly or wrongly, and it will professionalise the market.
I mean,
where people will get caught.
I mean, what do you two think about? Because obviously you've been landlord yourself, still landlords. I mean, what do you think about the bill coming in? Do you feel like you would lose control of it with Section 21s being scrapped and only being able to get your property back for certain grounds of the tenancy? Potentially, they're talking about rents being limited as well, so you can't increase your rents after specific amounts of time. I mean, if you were coming new into the property investing game, would you look at that and think, sod that, I've basically got no control over that, I can't call the shots? Or would you still be interested in getting involved in it?
I think the difference is the whole Section 21 thing is there was enough, you know, if you want to sell the property, you can end the tenancy. If you want a family member to move in, you can end the tenancy. If you need the property back yourself, you can end the tenancy. So I don't see that being a problem. It was just the Section 21 notices effectively were being used willy-nilly because it was the easiest way to end a tenancy. So because you didn't you could wimp out of actually having to give a reason within which you have to do in Section 8 and cause that argument. So that doesn't really bother me, because if I want to sell one of my investment properties, I can sell it now, or after this comes in, I can still sell it. So I don't really see that should affect anybody's decision making.
What if you wanted to, say, if you had an apartment that you needed to sell and it had been on the market for 3 months, you couldn't sell it and you wanted to rent it out again? Now the bill says that you can't re-let that property within a 6-month period. So do you think that potentially people would look at that and still there's a block there from actually doing what you want with the property? Because you're not going to leave property on for 6 months, are you? Well, some people do.
You don't want to leave
you don't want to
if you don't have to. But
normally, if it doesn't sell within 3 months, you've got another plan either to rent it out or put your other plans on hold.
I think it's now two ends of the spectrum, and whereas before accidental landlords or can't sell rent for 12 months was a big dominance in the middle of the market, now that is no longer an option for a lot of people. They'll still do it and not realise what they're doing and then regret it. We're now looking at super long-term investing strategy where you should really go and get a 10-year fixed mortgage and forget about it and give it to a letting agent. It's that level. Like, that's 10 years. I'm putting that tenant in there. This is what I'm going to pay. The rent's going to go up every 2.5 years or whatever the fixed term looks like. I'm going to build in costs, and that's a 10-year project that I'm just leaving there as a pot, like you would do with the stock market. Maybe not with you.
Not adding.
Definitely not with the crypto.
And on the flip to that, in answer to your question, the super short term, and while you're not getting huge tax, there's a loophole where you're not getting smashed on tax at the moment. That's Airbnb. You don't do if you can't sell your property and you want to let it for 3 months or 6 months, just Airbnb it. Don't do it with a letting agent. No one costing us money here, but that's not the goal. The goal is you're trying to get a bit of revenue while you get to the point where the market's better. So you're either super long term or super short term, or you're setting yourself up in a limited business and going down the HMO route or something like that, where you're looking at a cash flow business, basically. Really, that's the pots that we're falling into. All of the kind of accidentally bit in the grey area kind of stuff, that's all just being mitigated. So you're either like you're really in or you're really out. It's kind of that, isn't it? The hokey pokey.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like I said earlier, the short-term tenancy just gets wiped away, because what's the point in registering your property, registering yourself, doing this, doing that, to have a tenant in for 9-12 months and then sell it again? It just, you'd take a look at it, be given those terms and conditions by a letting agent, and just get no, I'll just keep it on. I'll just reduce it by 10 grand and get it away. That's how I can see people acting.
Yeah. I think where there's, I'm thinking out loud a little bit here, so I might get this really wrong, but I think where the generation, sort of our generation, if you look at people 35 to 45, 50, where a lot of people have got sort of younger kids, there's a lot of people that we've spoken to probably since COVID have kind of been looking at it saying, well, I've got this money, you know, especially when the interest rates were so low or the base rate was so low. I've got this money sat here. I've got 2 kids. I'm thinking of, you know, refinancing my home or putting this money into property, and almost thinking with the 2 kids in mind. That goes back to the long-term projects. You know, if you've got a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old and you go and acquire 2 properties and you sort of almost lock them away and forget about them for 10 years, well, then your circumstance in 10 years' time potentially changes, and then you go through the right processes, and who knows how many general elections there'll be in 10 years' time, and who's in power. There's a good chance Mike could be in power in 10 years' time. Like, anything could happen. But I think that's the way people have got to look at it now. Is it's very long-term, slow pounds. It's cash flow, HMO. It's you're out, but you're in through Airbnb. And yeah, I like the hokey pokey. That is the lettings market uncovered. The hokey pokey.
The hokey pokey.
The hokey pokey of the lettings market. Yeah. The other thing that I thought was quite interesting. Sorry, mate, to cut you off. Because I've got 2 stats here that I brought to the party. I did a little bit of market research just before. 35% of properties on the market between the 1st of September and the middle of November have been reduced. 35%. Yeah, 15% more than the same time last year. So nearly twice as many. Don't know, are you seeing that? Is that a thing? Like, obviously this includes Scotland, London, Wales, everywhere, but you know, 35%, over a third of rental properties being reduced before they're let.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with, you know, I haven't seen that because I'm, you know, I've been on Rightmove or looked at stats recently, but from the properties that we get on and the rental price that we give, I mean, we've probably had one that we've needed to reduce out of, you know, the many that we've had on the market, and that was just due to no, not necessarily us and a landlord wanting more for the property than what they needed to get, but from us, I mean, we're renting stuff at the asking price. I've seen few recently, more family homes that have been reduced rather than apartments, because I still think that some people out there are assuming that we're still sort of 12 months ago when it was running hot, and you could get £2,500 a month for a 3-bed small, you know, terrace property. You know, figures for that now we're probably seeing around 2.2. So I think some people haven't adjusted themselves to how the market is, and the market's very seasonal. So as we come into sort of October, November time, you don't tend to get sort of the rental prices you would get from April to September. But yeah, I mean, you're still getting good sort of rental prices out there if you're a landlord. So yeah, it's interesting it's 35% though, because that is pretty big over what, 2 and a bit months, 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky in the home counties, aren't we? Because the market, it's normally the first to go up and the last to go down. Yeah. So maybe we might see something in January. It will also be quite interesting to see what happens for tenancy demand in April, May, when the stamp duty threshold changes, whether there's all of a sudden a lot of first-time buyers that have just sort of missed the boat. I mean, there'll potentially be more February, March, because they'll know by then, won't they, that they haven't found and it's not going to happen. But that'd be quite interesting.
But again, it's all on sort of suppliers as well. You know, going back to what you said previously about either you're in it or you're out. As in, before it was, okay, yeah, I can be a landlord for 12 months and then do whatever. But now it's like in or out. And then you're going to have those people that were potentially doing it, here and there, now not doing it at all. So that's going to have an effect on the supply. And are we going to get those landlords coming back into the market with the numbers that have gone out of the market? Are there going to be more renters that will be able to afford to buy a property next year? Don't know, but again, it could just be all of those factors really that will determine how well the rental side is going to do.
So is it easier for has anything changed for tenants? Obviously, we're talking about landlords, evicting a tenant. A lot of the time, a landlord doesn't want to evict a tenant. So what about for the tenant to get out, and no real major changes?
No major changes. I mean, what they're going to have to do is if they want to bring their tenancy to an end, then instead of, if it was on a periodic tenancy, it's a 1 month notice for tenants. They now need to give 2 months notice. So the landlord does have a longer notice period with that. But that's about it. So it's just a more of a commitment for notice period for tenants, and everything else sort of remains the same.
Interesting. Okay. And in terms of like from a sales market perspective, I mean, we're seeing valuations are definitely starting to warm up a little bit and get a bit hotter as we sort of hit the end of November. I dare say that the second half of November will see more valuations than the first half of November, which is not seasonal. It's normally the other way around, but I think that's to do with the stamp duty threshold changes, which is quite interesting. But in terms of kind of next year, overall kind of snapshot summary of the rental market, what's kind of what do you feel? Is it the same? Will there be a big impact? Are we expecting anything different for landlords, with all of the things that have come from the budget and stuff? Will it really have that much of an impact on any of the bar charts if we were looking at it, or do you think it will?
I don't think on a local basis that it can, because property isn't exactly a liquid asset. Like, you can't just decide tomorrow that you're out. Yeah, like Bitcoin.
Yeah,
where you're just in and out on a daily basis. You can't just press the button and liquidate your property. So because it takes a couple of months to move your tenant on, and a few months. So the impact really will take, I guess, a couple of years to burn through. In which point you see whole cycles of economic stuff happening. Like, so it's hard to see. I just feel like in the southeast where we are, where it's such a suburban residential market, that nothing changes from that perspective. The goalposts just move, and it's the reason why every single budget landlords are picked on a little bit more, because you can pick on a landlord because they can't just make that snap decision overnight and do one. If you could, more people might have done it, but you've got a tenant in, they're happy, you're in contract, you don't have to pay your tax bill till next year. It's all a bit stealth, like not putting up the allowances for your PAYE, like not putting up IHT tax. It's no one's really feeling it on the day, so you don't get the protest, apart from farmers apparently. Like, different day.
Not happy.
Celebrity people leave.
Celebrity farmers, not landowners. But that's a different day.
Talking of Robin Hood, in a sort of roundabout way, the banks at the moment, base rate changed, put the interest rates up and drop the savings.
Stitched up.
I mean, what's that about? Can we slag off banks for 5 minutes?
Just for engagement farming.
Just for the Instagram reel, really. But I mean, Jesus Christ, like it's a bit harsh, isn't it? If we're going to do that, we see the base rate drop, we've seen inflation go up, and the banks have gone, do you know what? We'll put interest rates up and we'll drop the savings account.
Yeah.
It's
mortgage rates up, savings rates down. Cheers.
There's Watchdog and what's his chops on? You see when you need him.
What was his name? Matt Allwright?
No, the other lively guy that kind of does all the budgeting and cost saving.
Oh, Martin.
Yes,
he's there every week.
Be on that.
Thursdays,
wasn't it? Thursday nights. We'll have to check that out. Jesus. I mean, it's an interesting sort of space out there, but I do think everyone I talk to that's on the ground in the property world, I'm talking to buyers at the moment, sellers, tenants, landlords, all sorts of different characters that always reach out for advice, and everyone's just carrying on.
Yeah.
You know, like the investors I talk to at the moment are seasoned professionals or new investors that are looking to get into the market more with 50-50 basis of cash and loan. Like that seems to be more and more what people are feeling comfortable with as their first investment. They're now looking at it as 50-50, and the seasoned investors looking at it as, how do we buy it with 70%, 75% finance and remortgage as quickly as we can? Like that hasn't changed in a decade, maybe longer. And then all the tenants that I'm talking to are sort of unaware of this or unfazed by it. You know, the landlords that are staying in the market are going, like we've said, hokey pokey, super long or super short. And the buyers that are active are obviously very, very highly motivated at the moment to make deals stick. So the stamp duty threshold, you know, sort of changing or going back, as I should say, has definitely created a bit of a seasonal, festive, proactive kind of vibe to the market. So it'd be interesting to see how solicitors play around with that in December, whether they're going to push back some of their time off to try and serve the UK public, or whether they're going to go on holiday to Dubai or not. We don't know.
It will be the holiday.
Or they better. Yes, he's out of office. It's Monday. What's he doing out of office? Get him back in the office. But that'll be interesting to see. So yeah, we've got some guests coming up as well, I believe. We've got some guests booked.
Yeah, we've got some guests coming up. Yeah, over the next I think we've got two coming on. So yeah, watch out for those episodes. They'll be good ones. We always have good ones when the guests come on.
Yeah,
always knowledge bombers throwing them out.
Yeah, and I think it'd be nice to get some more topics covered around estate planning with everything that's gone on in the budget. I think it'd be nice to have some insight mortgage news, specifically around the buy-to-lets, what's going on there. So we'll get our trusted partners over at Mortgage Tribe in to kind of talk about that as well. So yeah, if you haven't subscribed, hit the button so you get the notification next time we're live with these different setups. And maybe we're going to title this one the Hokey Pokey. What do you reckon?
Yeah,
it's got to be there with a little bit of clickbait on that. See what it means. Watch the show.
Pokey.
Yeah, share it with family, friends, and colleagues if you've enjoyed it. And we'll be back next Friday.